Alright, I think this is set up now. Just gonna quickly check. Alright, it does appear to be working. Just gonna quickly check. Alright, it does appear so I think we're good. Just gonna quickly. So, alright, now that that's going. So welcome back, everyone. It's been a little while since I last hopped on here to do this. Today I'm just going to be continuing cutting this piece of citrine that I have here. This one, I don't remember what it started off at, but it will probably be close to about a 2 carat after I'm done with it. It's just a matter of getting it shaped into the shape that I'm looking for. Since it has been a little while, just give a quick preview again of what the cut is. But basically, ooh, hold on. Can't quite show the measurements because I paid for this one and I don't want to get in trouble for showing it, but I can show the picture of it. And basically the picture is going to look something like this, where you have a square piece of quartz, or it's a quartz design, but quartz is part of the citrine family, so it'll end up being a very similar type of refractive index, which is the way that the light comes in through the stone and allows you to see a sparkle out of the top of it. So I'm going to be doing this kind of design where it's more of a square cut, where you have this right here being the bottom part of the stone, you have this being the side view, the top view, and then down there, can't quite reach it, the opposite side view looking from top to bottom. So at the moment, I've just got the pavilion completed, which is, or not even completed, I just started on it, which is the pointy part of the stone. And that pointy part is going to basically be the bottom part of the stone, so to speak. So I'm just on the first initial cuts. Let's see if I can get this to focus a smidge. There we go. So at the moment, I just have an equal distant cut. The first set was at 40, just at about 45 degrees, and now I'm doing the 90-degree cuts on the side. If you look at the camera on this side of the screen, you'll see that you can kind of see that I'm trying to get this part squared off along both of the, or around the edge of the stone. That'll go into that kind of square pattern and make it look real pretty when you have it sitting there. So at the moment, I have just finished up the second set of cuts, I believe. So I have 4, yes, the second set, and then also I'm working, or starting to work on the third set. Now in this case, I gotta get all of the girdle around the edge, which is the flat band around the center of a stone from the top and the bottom part of the stone. I gotta get it all about the same thickness, so that way it's easy for a jeweler who would create a ring setting to be able to set the stone into a ring. So my goal right now is to cut off more of this material here on the sides of each of the girdle, so that way there's an equidistant band around the stone that is all the same diameter. There's a formula for that, which allows it makes it easier for people to make the prongs to grab the stone. I'd have to calculate out what it is because it actually changes depending on the physical size of the stone. Not by very much, but enough to where it can have an effect, especially for your poor jeweler who has to do that. So I'm going to end up starting on that. But first, I want to make sure that I get a nice band around. So I'm going to come back and restart the cuts and make that equal. I got my water set up here. It's all filled, so I'm good to go. Water down below is emptied, so I'm good to go. And it's time to start going. So this is a 90-degree cut, so I'm going to be ending up basically having this stone more or less just touching this lap right here. You can kind of see it on the main camera where it's just laying on the side, as opposed to a 45 or a different degree cut, which would be, or a less shallow or less shallow cut, which would be a higher degree and more at an angle towards the machine. So first off, I want to make sure that the lap, which is the cutting disc right here, is set up nice. The other thing I needed to quickly check before I start. Okay, I do have a number here. I have to zero out my cuts on each side so they're all the same. And in this case, they're not quite there just yet. I might have to check a couple different sides and see which is going to be the one that's the lowest, and then go from there. So that's almost a 50. At 24, it's almost a 50. 36, the same. And what I'm meaning by that is I have a dial indicator here on the side of the machine that has, you can see it kind of right now on the bore cam or on the cam in the top left corner. This side actually has a dial on it that tells me where I'm cutting to and allows me to keep my cuts consistent across all the different sides of the facet. So you sometimes arbitrarily start at a specific point and just make sure that all of the cuts around the perimeter of the stone go to that same point. Sometimes you zero it out, so you say that, okay, I'm at 0 here, now everything has to go to 0, but it's really up to you and it's up to the cutter. It's just as long as you keep it consistent, so that way you're going to the same spot every time. Because if you don't go to the same spot every time, you're not going to be consistent around the edge of the stone, which can cause proportions to not quite match up and facets to not match up. And you don't want that, because otherwise it doesn't look like a pretty stone. So at this point, I'm just checking all the pre-existing cuts I've done to make sure that they're all at or around the same spot. And from what I can see, most are. So first I'm going to do cut level, girdle, leave corners, P1. Okay. Just reading this cut list now to figure out what I need to do next. So P3 is the corner sections. P2 is the straight part of the top of the square and bottom and sides of the square, if you were to imagine a square. So what I think I need to do is all of P3's are the corners, or the corners of the squares that are cut at a 45-degree angle. So what I'm going to do is, what I gotta do is make sure that the edge of P3 and the edge of P2 on both sides is good. So I need 6 and 8 to go to P3's edge point, or 6 and 18. And then same with 30 and 42. And 54 and 66. Okay, I'm getting it now. It's just a matter, I haven't done this cut before, so I'm trying to figure out how exactly it's supposed to work. So this guy is here. So this one needs to go there. Okay, so I got it now. So 12, 36, 60, 84. Okay. So I need all the other ones. 96, 24, 48, and 72 to more or less cut to those edges. Got it. Okay, so now we're going to begin. If I'm doing this wrong, I'm learning. So first off, we're going to start here. And I'm arbitrarily just starting at 96 or 0 on the index scale. So that way I can get a baseline depth cut for all the other 4 cuts that I'm going to need to make sure that the gem comes together. So in this case, if you look at the bore cam in the corner there, I have 0 right here. I know that's kind of out of focus, but if I might be able to get it a smidge down. My problem is I can't focus both on the number and the stone at the same time, so I'm trying to focus more on the stone. So just work with me on this when it comes to that. But this 0 is where I'm set at right now. You can kind of see this piece. That's a piece of brass, which indicates which cut you're at. 12, which is right here, is where I'm trying to make this facet right here on the corner be flat. So this facet that I'm pointing at right now with my tweezers is the one that has to be flat. So I have to go from basically this corner right here all the way to 84, which is this corner right here, and cut off all of this material in between. Oops. And cut off all this material right here in between to make it so that the line that comes down to here and the line that comes down to here are at the same point, if that makes sense. And that will make it square off this kind of hexagon shape that I have currently. So let me see. I forgot to get myself a rag. There we go. Rag to work with. Okay. So we're going to continue to cut. I'm just using a 600 grit topper cutting lap right now because I don't want to take this too aggressive because it causes a lot of pitting from the lower grits that I have for toppers, which means that it takes more time for me to polish it out. So it's either take more time polishing, which is always more of a pain because sometimes you end up over polishing trying to get rid of a single scratch, or just take a little bit more time cutting with a shorter grit. So I'm going to go with the latter of those two so that way I don't have to deal with the more time polishing, because more time polishing really, it gets annoying. So right now this is the side that I've been trying to cut with, this flat portion right here. As you can see, it's now a little bit longer than the other sides around the stone because I'm trying to match this line right here and this line right here up together. So I'm basically cutting off all of this right here below this line of water that I just basically drew on that stone. So let me see another thing. Okay. Okay. So I'm just gonna take this little by little and keep working it down until it gets to a point that I'm happy, and then I'm gonna reset the dial indicator or that's here to the new setting on those other facets that are around, those other 3 facets. So when all 3 of those are then down to the level that this one is when it's finished, then all 4 of them will be at the same level, and thus the band around the stone or the girdle will be able to be even. So, alright. So we're getting fairly close there now. If you look, this long edge right here is getting pretty long. in comparison to the other sides. These two are now looking quite a bit shorter than this side. So just a little bit of time to keep going at it. Let's see. Okay, that's getting fairly close at this point. But still a bit of a way away. What I may actually do, I think I want my girdle to have a little bit more, but I don't want to overcut. Right now what I'm trying to figure out is if the amount that I've cut off already will be good enough for the sections that I'm not cutting on. So, because if it's not, then I'm going to have to essentially recut everything all over again. I think we're going to be okay, so I'm just going to leave it for now. And hopefully there won't be any issues with that. So, let's see. Now, I'm just going to keep going because I'm almost there. Get this set up. There we go. Yeah, this would be a lot easier if I could show off the pattern. I just don't necessarily want to do that at the moment. If I had a free pattern, like I have some free patterns that I've used that are considered open source, that I'd be able to show off what I'm doing and be able to show the full pattern itself and explain it, I would. I just don't at the moment for this one. So, and there are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of different patterns that are out there. Some are paid and some are free. In the case of this one is a paid one by Jeff Graham. He was considered one of the better, if not one of the best, facet design designers out there for a hobbyist to be able to cut with. But he had some that were free and some that were paid that were put into a booklet. And I picked up the booklet, and the booklet's not expensive. It's only like a couple bucks, but it's still sold, so I don't want to be able to give away his intellectual property, or at least his estate's intellectual property, because he unfortunately is no longer with us. So this is coming along pretty nicely. It's actually a lot faster than I thought it would be. The 600 grit is, even though it's a lighter, more polishy type of cutting, or more polished, I'm sorry, type of cutting grit, it still cuts at a decent clip. So in this case now, I'm trying to get this corner right here to on the actual physical cut to match up with that line that is going up to the point at the top, because it's oh so close. You can kind of see it's getting closer, but it's got to be at that point before it'll be considered finished. And at this point I've hit the stop on my machine. So what I have to do is actually adjust this down. There we go. there's a physical stopping point where the machine will not go any further than the 90 degrees that I have it currently set to. Um, you can kind of see that from the top view here. If I can get it to go around. There we go. Right here, this block has numbers on it. Let's see if I can get it to focus. There we go. So it has numbers on it, and this inner block right here has a 0, and it is matched up with the 90 degrees here on this faceting head. And basically, when you've completely hit the edge of the machine on this block, because it'll move back and forth, as you can see, there's like this little white piece underneath this block right here. When it completely hits the edge of this block, then you know that the machine is at 90 degrees perfect. So that way you know you have a perfect 90-degree surface. In my case, I was running out of the running out of play in that because I'd fully hit the stop, which means that my cut for what it's currently configured as is exactly 90 degrees. Now that's an overly technical explanation, but it just is bear noting so you're aware of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about it. Okay. Still getting closer at this point to that meeting that other facet, but not yet, so we're going to keep going. This is where it can kind of get a little boring sometimes because you're generally just sitting here waiting for something to cut to a very specific spot, but you don't want to just completely zone out and forget about it, because then if you overshoot, now you got to recut everything to the overshoot. So you have to pay attention, but you kind of idly sit by when you're not yet close to that area. At this point, I still got a little ways to go, but you can see now, if I zoom this in, how oblong this top section is versus the other sides, which are more hexagonal. And that's because that'll be the first or side of this square shape that this gem is designed to be. And it'll take a little while too. Like I said, it would be a lot quicker if I used a more rough type topper that cuts. But at the same time, I'm not really wanting to do that just yet, because if I do, then I'm going to have to deal with polishing out any super deep scratches that might appear. Getting there, still far, a little bit away though. So I'm going to drop this down a little bit more. I'm like right on the edge of that lap. You might be able to see it in that top left video. I'm really on the edge of the spinning lap, just because I have to use up as much as possible of the lap to get this perfect shape, because this head part right here, you can see on the main screen, only moves up and down so much before it runs out of play at the bottom of its travel. So I'm still dropping this down further. At this point, it's getting very, very close. I don't know if you can see it quite with the bore cam here. Let me see if I can readjust it a bit. go. So again, I'm trying to get this edge right here to match up with this line right here that goes all the way up, and this line right here that goes all the way up. So I've only got a little bit left of this side to cut off. I kind of put some water on to get it to match up. Well, hello there, Zumia. Thank you for stopping by to watch. It is nice to have somebody watching this and figuring out and showing some interest. Okay, getting closer. Alright. So I'm basically at this point at that line on this side. Though on this side I've got a little bit more to go. Trying to figure out. I think I can get this to match up a little bit more. I just have to focus more on this side. So depending on where you put the stone across the lap, you'll cut off one side a little bit more than the other because of the shape, because of the arc distance on the end of the stone to where the lap disc is. Um, I can't really figure out how to say that better, but basically sometimes one side will cut a little bit faster than the other depending on where or how far you put it along the radius of the disc. That's probably a better way of putting it. So I'm trying to make sure that both sides match up more or less evenly. Otherwise, you'll get into a situation where one side will be almost there, but the other will be there, and now you have to either overcut on one or undercut on the other. So an easy way to do that is to kind of push it further up on the disc to get a more even coverage on both the far side of the disc and the close side of the disc to balance out the cut. The perfect way to do this is to only have the cut at exactly 90-degree parallel with the center of the auger here, which would mean that both sides are getting cut at an even clip or at an even pace. But it's not necessarily easy to do that sometimes because you don't want to keep the material in one spot for a whole long time, because then it just gets the material on the lap into the lap disc, which causes it to cut less effectively and also cause more damage to the stone in the future, because you only have a bunch of material in one band on the lap as it's spinning around in a circle. So you kind of move it around. That's why you'll see me just lightly pushing it back and forward most of the times that I'm doing this, because I'm trying to make sure that the material that's underneath on the lap is getting pushed out from underneath the gem as it comes around for a second pass, third pass, fourth pass, and yada yada. Otherwise, it'll just all accumulate. Alright, so at this point, you can see here we are very, very close, but if you look right there, you can see the very tip of that is still a little bit further out than that line, that facet line, up to the cullet point, or the top point here of the stone. So I'm just trying to make sure that that gets adjusted, because on this side right here, we're already at the point, and it's literally just because of where the gem was on the lap disc. So I'm kind of having to lightly finagle this so that way it's even. The other um, problem that I have is this machine has seen some love, it's seen a lot of attention, and it's not quite holding the tolerances that it was when it was made new. So there's some slop. I call it slop because that's there's no very or better way to say it, but there's some slop in how things are lined up within the machine. So you can cause something to shift a little bit more on one side than it does on the other, and because of that, that ends up causing a less accurate cut as well. So and you can kind of hear the difference in sound too, because I'm aware of where some of that slop is, and I'm playing with my machine to kind of compensate. And try and use that to my advantage. Alright. Here we go. That's about as good as I think I'm going to get it. Because now, on this side right here, I'm matched. On this side right here, I am matched. So I can possibly, during the polishing process, even it out a little bit, apply a little bit more polish on one side to the other, or spend more time polishing it on one side or the other, so that way it smooths it out and makes it a perfect match. And that's part of the cleanup process when you're cutting a gem. So now I'm happy with that. I'll come back on a second pass probably in a bit, but what I'm going to do is go back and recut this one more time, or not recut this. I'll go back to recut this, and in the meantime, I'm going to go on to the next cut. So at this point, you can see this long section is one side. Between this corner right here, actually, I'm going to use my point, little tweezers. So between this point right here and this point right here is the corner of a square that's been cut off at a 45-degree angle. So I'm going to be taking on the next section and cutting from right here to right here, just like where that water line is. So I got to cut off all of that material in order to get the next corner of the square. Now the nice thing is since I had that first cut planned out and everything matched up, now all I have to do is on my dial indicator here is go to that same number for this facet, and that will let me know that I'm even and at the same dimension and depth on this cut as I was on the last cut. So this is the bit of the long part because I just got to sit here and basically wait for it to cut down. But as you can see, it's already starting to get a little bit more squared off when compared to this section here and this section here. Another thing I've been trying to do, well, I haven't been making videos, is I'm trying to get a different stand for my bore cam, which I have on the top right, or the top right image in the screen. So that way I can kind of move it around a little bit. The stand I ordered is going to be taking a little while to get in, but it'll allow me to actually adjust it on the fly so I can show the sides instead of just from the top down. Because at the moment I just have the camera taped to this light fixture here, so it can look down and you can see the exact view that I've been showing. So at this point I'm just moving it back and forth. and get off more material. I've almost gone, I started at about 42 on the dial, and I'm at about 45 right now. I'm sorry, 38 on the dial and at about 45, so it cuts fairly quickly. And you could probably start to see the difference now as well, where this side now is getting to be longer than the surrounding sides around it, and to try and match this side right here. Alright, so this is starting to cut out pretty nicely. We're getting closer to the edges there. So now you might be able to better see those facets. So going for that facet and this facet. So we still got quite a bit to go. This is the point where it's kind of nice to talk with people, or just hop on and listen to music, or if I'm doing this on my own and not streaming, just watch some TV, because you have an idea on the dial where it's supposed to be going to, now that you have the predetermined other facet. And then you can just more or less kind of keep one eye on the show, or listening to music or a podcast, and then the other on where it's supposed to go to. So it's getting a lot closer here. It's still a little ways away. I don't actually remember what the number was on the other one, so I'm going to go back so I can see what it was. Okay, so on the other number, we were at 56 on the first facet. So the second facet, we are at, turn the water back on, we are at about 46, so we got another 10 to go. I'm not quite sure what the number indicates, if it's in metric or imperial. That's why I'm just using general numbers instead of saying 10 millimeters or 10,000th of an inch. I think it is an imperial, but unless I knew for sure, I wasn't going to say. So, and then, so Zumi has commented, are each of those lines going to be cut? And the answer is not every one of them, but a lot of them will be cut. There's going to be cuts that go over the different lines, so that way it can create a more intricate pattern, and each one of those will be cut at a shallower or a deeper depth, so that way it adds the brilliance and the shininess on the material that you would see if you imagine like a diamond. Like when you look in the top of a diamond, it has all the little triangles within it that bounce the light around. That would be, each one of those little triangles is a different depth of cut. So some of these lines will stay in the final design, but the majority of them will be cut over again with a deeper or shallower cut to allow the light to bounce around within the stone. So at this point on the dial, we're now at about 48, 49. It'll soon be 50, so we're getting pretty close. We're only about 6 away. So cuts fairly quickly. It's just a matter of getting it to that point. Now we're at 50. moving it helps a little because it allows it to cut kind of like a rocking pattern. So you can not only get the where the surface is getting cut, but you can also kind of round out over the edges a little bit. So it allows it to cut a little bit more than just keeping it in one spot where it's just slowly cutting down through the material. So we're now at 52. And on the visual side you can see it's fairly close on this side right here, where my fingernail's touching, and then fairly close right here, but you can see the line's not quite matched up on those two corners just yet. So what I've also been trying to do is my videos that are on Twitch here, I'm taking them and putting them on YouTube as well, because eventually they will be pulled off my Twitch just because I'm not an affiliate or anything like that. So if you want to see some of my the prior videos, if they disappear off of this Twitch, you can go to my YouTube channel, which I have it as a link in the description, and then you can watch the videos. I'm trying to keep them all to about an hour long each. Eventually, if I frequently do this enough, I'd get it to where I'd have an editor who would go through and edit through the live footage to cut it down to a more reasonable watchable chunk. But at the meantime, that's just how I'm doing it until I get some followers and interest in the stream and the process itself. So right now we're basically at the edge. Where did I put my little pointer? Right here. So we're basically at the edge right here. Just a smidge more to go on that side, and on this side is basically at the edge as well. Oops, right there. So it's getting very close, and I'm basically at 55 right now on the cut, so I'm just getting it down to the last 56, which is be right about now-ish, I think. Let's see. Just a smidge more. I'll also, if I'm unsure with my current glasses setup, I'll actually throw on some magnification here so I can look up closer. Basically touching just a little bit more. Magnification definitely helps to be able to see up close. I'm using a 10 power magnification on this right side and a 15 power on the left side, so if I really need to get up close I can use the 15 instead of the 10. That's more than enough to be able to see in most instances, and with the naked eye it's difficult to tell even below 10 power or without using a 10 power what some of these are looking like. So okay, I'm thinking that's actually looking fairly good at this point. Let's see. Okay, that one side is touching just perfectly. This side's touching perfectly right here. My fingernails on. And then this side is touching as well. So now you can see this is two of the corners of the square. Let me zoom out a little bit. There we go. Beginning to look a little bit more square-like. Get this to focus. Focus, focus, focus. Wrong way. There we go. So I'm hoping to get the other two done before this hour is over. May not quite be that way, because I think I'm at about 45 minutes now, but we'll try and get it there. So the next side we're cutting is the 48 index. So I went from 24 here to 48, which will be this side right here, and I'll match these two sides. Just checking. Yep. Always check twice, cut once. Especially with this, you can sometimes blow out your cuts very quickly, and that is no good. So I started on the dial indicator here at about 40, so I got to go down to 56 or up to 56, which means a little bit of time. So, in the meantime, well, for those who do watch this, please feel free to give me any um, feedback on how you think it looks so far. I've been trying to get this camera set up in a better way to make it more visible, while also being out of my way when I'm trying to cut. So if you have any feedback on how that is, feel free to give it, and I will definitely look into getting something a little bit better set up. A lot of the materials that I'm picking up with this are not super expensive when it comes to camera setups, but at the same time it can be a little bit pricey. Oh, and looking at the stream, it looks like my main camera's frozen, so I gotta stop for a second, turn it on and off. There we go. Sometimes, I don't know why, my streaming setup will freeze a frame on one of the cameras that I have. So I just have to manually go in there and start and stop it, and it gets back to the way it was before. So just in that little bit of time that we've been talking, I'm at about 50 or 46, so it's moving pretty quickly. Oh, and actually looking at it, each tick mark is 1, not 2. I was thinking it was 2. So we're actually not at 56, we're at 54 is where I need to go, and I started at 40. So a little bit less than I initially thought. Just cut away. Let's take a pause and show the progress. So now we're cutting on this side right here. So as you can see, it's starting to square out with the other two sides over there. And this whole portion of the process takes a lot of the material and cuts off a lot, reducing the yield. In this case, I'm trying to see if I can find it. They calculated out that if you started out with a stone that was about, I think it's 1 centimeter high and about half a centimeter wide, half a centimeter long, half a centimeter tall, and a quarter centimeter depth. I believe that might be the depth. Not quite sure. You would get back about something that was just under a third of a centimeter when completed. So what that means is you get back a third of whatever you're cutting, which is quite a bit of loss, but that That's to be expected with material, because you have to cut off a lot to make it conform to the shape of the stone. Alright, so again, we're cutting this side right here, so as you can see it's getting a lot more squared. Still got a little bit to go before the corner right there matches up with the facet, but not that far. My dial is saying that I'm currently at about 48 and I need to be at 54, so about 6 before I get there. So, yeah. And then, in the meantime, my stream looks like it's going well. It's not got any issues. A little choppy. I might have to adjust frame rates in the future. It may also be that this laptop just can't quite handle um, the bit rate that I'm throwing at it. It's a bit of an older laptop. I think I picked it up in like 2017 or 2018. So it's seen some love, and it's getting ready to get close to needing to be retired. But as long as it continues to work, I'm going to continue to use it. So getting closer now at this point, just trying to get that corner right there to match up with the line, which from what you're seeing, it's very close, but if I get this lighting just right, you might be able to see both sections. You can kind of see it barely there. That just needs a little bit more. At the dial, we're almost at 50, like halfway between 49 and 50, so just need to get to 54 and we're good to go. A little bit of boring at the moment, but it gets there slowly but surely. That's the hardest thing I think about doing this hobby. Is it's not that it's a difficult hobby, it's just that it tends to be a little bit monotonous because you're taking so much time just moving forward and trying to get things to a certain spot, and it takes a long time. Now, the the way to conquer that is to buy better equipment, buy better material or equipment that can remove material, that or polish material, and that'll help speed up the process a bit. But it's still going to take a little natively a while because you're cutting through material at a slower pace, um, and trying to use a material that would not scratch um, the stone or the finished product. Because if that happens, then it's not really worth it for the stone or for the stone. Okay, so getting fairly close here. In the top right, you can see it's really squaring off nicely. I think on the dial, let's see, we're at about 51, and I need to be to 54 or 53. I can't remember what it is. I think it was 53 actually. I'll compare that when I get to 52 and make sure that way I don't overcut. And then we'll go on to the next and final side for this set of cuts. Yeah. Eventually, too, for me, I'd like to get to a spot where I could put on the screen at least like a obviously I can't stream certain types of music without permissions of the copyright holders, but I'd like to put down like a thing that would change and it would show you what music I'm listening to on a certain playlist. That way, if anybody was interested, they could, and they had their own Spotify, they could, because that's what I usually use off of, or listen to music off of. But you could go to there, find that playlist, and then find the song I was listening to and kind of listen along if you were interested. Um, but that's something that's in the future when I get a little bit more people who are interested in seeing this and get this down to be more of a regimented schedule. Because it's been a while since I streamed last, and I really need to get better at streaming more frequently. Okay, at this point I am at 52. And you can kind of see too that by cutting a lot of the material off the sides, you'll notice that the inside of the stone, you can see that kind of like hollow effect where it really brightens up there when I move my finger and whatnot. And that's because the light now has more ways of getting into the stone, so it's going to brighten it up significantly. The other side, when I cut it out, it'll probably make it so that you can see the whole part uh, lit up as bright as that corner is right there on this side. Um, what you're actually seeing there is you're seeing through the stone and you're seeing the brass stop. If you look on the left camera, you can see this brass stop right here that is attached to the bottom of the stone. So the stone is clear enough to where you can see the light going down. It's bouncing off the top of that brass stop and then back up, and making it so you can see the shine. So gonna work on getting that cut a little bit more, but so that we can get this done. But in the meantime, I'm gonna move this to here. So 53 is what I was cutting to, not 54. I was incorrect earlier. I'm glad I checked. So I'm going to end up going to 53, which technically I am currently at. So let me quickly pull up my magnifiers so I can see what I'm doing. Let's see how close it is. So to the naked eye it's touching, but with magnification I'm still a very, very, very small amount away from the facet. So I'm going to take this time to quickly get a little bit more off so it matches up as close as possible. Okay, I think at this point that's about matching. Yes, that is matching, in fact. So I think we're good on this one. Let's go now to the final side, which is a 72 index. So far I have cut my 96, 24, 48, and now I'm going to be doing this 72 index side, and that will make it so that the stone is a complete square around the edges. So starting off, this is at 38, or I'm sorry, 39, so we got to go from 39 to 53, so it'll take a little bit, but we're nearly done. And since this is so close, I might actually cut a little bit over the 1 hour mark for this, just so I can try and get all 4 of these cuts, and then I'll cut away to a secondary video. I don't know if I'm going to continue today or if I'm going to take a break and then continue, or if I'm just going to stop for the day. So I may be on for the next video, but I just haven't quite decided yet. Okay, on the dial we're now up to 42. This is cutting nice and quickly. and to show how quickly. So we're now here. You can see that's getting quite longer, and it's almost matching up. And you should be able to see now the symmetry between this corner, this corner, this corner, and this corner. So I'm trying to match these two right here with the symmetry of these two right here. Try and use my other hand for a second. Got a notification. It's trying to see what it was, what the notification was. Okay, at this point, about 43 and a half. So chugging right along. And one of the things that I actually use a lot when cutting is not only visual but a lot of auditory, because you can tell how heavily something is cutting by the sound it makes. As an example, this is more or less a normal pressure, but you can hear the difference there when I don't put as much pressure on it, or there when I put more pressure on it and move it. So there's a lot of difference and nuance in the sound effects, and that is you're using your sense of hearing just as much as you're using your eyesight to check and see what things are doing. In fact, a lot of the times you can tell whether you've done the wrong um, cut or wrong index almost immediately, not by sight, and you won't even realize you did it by sight. You'll tell by sound, because it'll sound completely different than the other ones that you were just cutting, and then it's usually a oh crap moment. I put it on the wrong index. So at this point, we're already at 47, so it's really moving quickly now. And now you can see it's really starting to square off that stone, and the light is starting to get in all the sides, because this girdle facet right here that I'm cutting is getting much more light through it, which is nice. I'm also going to try and see if I can maybe grab one of my light filters. I have some just general like projector films that were used for like I don't even know, like geology or geography or whatnot in teaching school, but they work well as a light filter to filter out certain colors and allow only certain colors to go through. And it completely changes the effect when you put this blue light here, filter here, versus the standard incandescent color filter. So depending on what material you're cutting, sometimes it can help you be able to see within the stone a little bit better if you have a different color of light. And I have all types of different colors, like green, I have blue, an orange or orangey red, and all of those kind of assist with being able to see into the stone just a little bit more than you would normally be able to under standard incandescent. So here, and I'll actually give you an example. So this is normal incandescent color. If I put this blue on right here, it doesn't change it a ton, but it's enough for you to see that there is a difference between the two. Like this really brightens it up, whereas this really makes it more moot and allows you to kind of see in different depths of field on the material. And then I can also do that as well over the camera lens. Unfortunately, it blurs it, so I tend to just use it over the light itself. That way you can see very easily what you're doing. Yeah, and as the comments said, Zumi from the comments was saying it tends to make it look a lot different, and yes, it definitely does. Also, depending on the color of your stone, it can have a different effect too. Like some of your greener stones, like your emeralds or beryls, will tend to be either pink or green. So sometimes having certain colors that can cancel will make it so you can look through the stone easier, or maybe it'll make it so that it's harder to see through the stone, so you're focusing more on the actual facets themselves, which can tend to make it easier for you to tell um, what you're cutting and where you're cutting it at what depth you're cutting. Okay, at this point I'm just about at 50. I'm about 49 and a half. So we only got 3 to go. So let's take a look up close. So as you can see, it's almost completely square at this point. I'm just barely close enough to matching those 2 other points. So we're going to just keep chugging along and hopefully be done here pretty soon. I just realized also I didn't change my title for this show or this live stream, so it will be corrected on the YouTube video that gets released to YouTube once I upload it, and I'll make sure that it's correct so it's not saying the incorrect information. Um, Still learning my way around the streaming setup, so at this point we're at 52 depth, so now we're almost done. It's getting to the point where I start needing to use magnification to see how close I am to being done. Yeah, it's touching nearly on this side and touching nearly on that side, but it's not quite fully there. So I'm gonna have to keep going. The good thing is it's showing that my machine is more or less dialed in, and it's not having a lot of slop introduced into it, because all 4 of these cuts have been almost exactly the same in their appearance when cut to the same depth, which means that the machine is performing way better than it has been in the past. Because in the past I was dealing with issues where it would sometimes it would cut to the same distance, but it would be off. It's like, why is it off? And I realized that there was a certain section of the machine where if I touch it just the right way, it'll throw everything off. And so I've been able to correct for it by making sure that it is in the proper position before I start cutting, so that way I don't have that issue. Alright, at this point I'm just about at 53, which is the depth I need to be. So we're going to throw this on real quick. I'm going to get up close. Alright, so this side I'm good. That side I'm good. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with that. So I'll shut this off real quick, and then I'll show final results of these 4 cuts. So as you can see, now we have a square gem that just has the corners cut off of it, which is exactly how the design is supposed to have it. So it means that we're doing a good job getting this to where it needs to be. So that is the 3rd set of cuts for the pavilion out of 7. So I got another 4 to go before I can even do the top. But it's going to be in the next video, so I'm probably going to stop the stream now, take a little break, and then I'll come back and restart it again. That way I can segment these out for the videos. So, alright, I think I'll be back, but just going to go for a break, and I'll be back in a bit. See you then.